So when I throw it on the time grapher here, you can see that the error rate is 0 seconds per day. What the... For this video, I'm talking about one of the world's most iconic watches, the Omega Seamaster. I'm going to talk about why the Seamaster isn't really a watch. I'm going to talk about why this timepiece is one that every true aficionado should own. And I'm going to talk about why I chose an Omega Seamaster 300 over the watch it's always compared to, the Rolex Submariner. All that coming up next. The Omega Watch Company usually needs no introduction, but for the benefit of the few who don't know Omega, it's a Swiss luxury watchmaker founded in 1848, whose watches have been worn by British pilots during World War I, the Royal Air Force and British Navy in World War II, and NASA astronauts throughout the moon landing program. This specific watch, the Omega Seamaster 300, is the watch Prince William wore on his wedding day, and of course it's the watch worn by both Pierce Brosnan and Daniel Craig as James Bond. Omega has a long history of making beautiful, robust, accurate timepieces. The glass on this watch is domed sapphire crystal with anti-reflective coating on both sides. The bezel and dial are made from zirconium dioxide, a ceramic used for jet engine linings and ceramic knives, with a hardness of 9 on the Mohs scale, unlikely to be scratched by anything except diamonds. The dial is laser engraved with a gorgeous wave pattern that plays with light. In fact, I'll just say now that this is the most photogenic watch I've ever worked with. It always seems to find a good angle. The dial has a date window at 6 o'clock, nice and small and unobtrusive. The bezel is scalloped with just the right amount of tension and a deep, rich clicking sound. The hands and dial markers are rhodium plated and filled with superluminova. Rhodium is a silvery white precious metal that looks like aged silver, but, unlike silver, will never tarnish. At the time of making this video, rhodium is selling for about 109 times the price of silver and more than double the price of platinum. The dial markers are raised, which takes the dial away from the tool watch look and makes it more of a versatile dress diver. I also quite like the splash of red in the Seamaster lettering and on the tip of the sweeping seconds hand. The case is 42mm, made of marine grade 316L stainless steel with a sculpted crown guard. At the 10 o'clock is a conical helium escape valve used to let out helium gas after deep high pressure commercial dives. I think it's fair to say that virtually no one who buys this watch will take advantage of the helium escape valve feature, but in the James Bond tradition, it's nice to know that it's capable of that. Some people don't like the look of the valve, maybe because they're used to seeing extra knobs and buttons at 2 and 4 o'clock, but not at 10. However, I think it does give the watch a unique and distinctive look, and it would certainly be more plain without it. One of the more discounted superhero features about this watch is its resistance to magnetism. The original Rolex Milgauss, for example, was designed to be as anti-magnetic as possible with the ability to withstand 1000 Gauss. This Omega Seamaster has the ability to withstand over 15,000 Gauss, owing to the silicone hairspring and other improvements. One sticking point for many about this model is the bracelet, if you choose to get it with the stainless steel bracelet. It's a superbly built, beautifully finished bracelet with solid end links and a diver's extension that works smoothly with just the push of a button. The reason people don't love the bracelet is because of the look. Most people like the brickwork look, I do, but I don't know anyone who loves the look. Let me know if you disagree, but that seems to be the common consensus. Having said that, I'm not exactly sure what type of bracelet would be better. Maybe shark mesh? Now, one side note from experience, if you swim with this watch, Sand can get in the diver's extension and prevent it from working smoothly. If that happens, a quick rinse and shake with non-sandy water clears it out just fine. The diver's extension is also very handy for micro-adjusting the fit during different weather or when your fitness changes between seasons. With the downturned lugs on the case itself, the well-finished bracelet, and the micro-adjustments, the end result is an exceptionally comfortable wear. I mentioned at the beginning that the Seamaster isn't really a watch. I say that because, unlike models such as a Cartier Tank or a Rolex Submariner, Seamaster is really a line of watches. For example, this is a Seamaster. So is this, and so is this. Aside from the Seamaster on the dial, there are few similarities between them. For the Seamaster diver, it took Omega a while to find a combination that can stand the test of time the same way other iconic models have. I still don't think the Seamaster Diver 300 is aesthetically perfect. However, it's pleasing enough to have been produced and recognizable in its current form since the early 1990s. The quality of the lume on this watch is the best I've seen in initial quality. It's brighter and crisper than either a Rolex Submariner or a Seiko diver, and it's unique in having a distinctly colored minute hand. It looks fabulous. However, lasting lume is all about volume. The dial markers are big, with lots of volume, but the hands have mere strips of lume with almost no volume except at the points. Compare that to the thick hands of a Seiko and you'll see the difference. So for the first few minutes, the Omega beats them all. But after about 20 minutes or so, the hands of the Omega start to fade, while the thick hands of the Seiko, for example, stay bright. The yellow-green lume of this Seiko appears slightly brighter than the blue of the Omega, but keep in mind that this is because I'm currently on land. Blue light is more visible in water. The other thing to note is that on a Seiko or a Rolex, the hands are quickly and easily distinguishable from the dial markers. On the Seamaster 300, because the dial markers, second hand, and hour hand all have circles, it's difficult to tell them at a glance. Personally, I love the elegant design of the hands with the strips, but I'd like to see them wider with more lume, and I'd love to see both hands a different color from the dial, not just the minute hand. I'd also like to see both hands ending with points so they're easily distinguishable from the dial markers. I'm not sure if you feel the same way or if you'd keep it as it is, but that's how I feel. As an aside, I was really glad that this particular model I bought wasn't used in No Time to Die, the movie where James Bond learns he's a father, falls in love, feels sad about his nanoparticles, cries, and then dies. Now, on to my favorite part, the Omega Caliber 8800 self-winding movement with a full 55-hour power reserve. It's a great-looking movement with a striking Geneva wave pattern throughout, plated with rhodium to match the dial and will never tarnish. And here's where I get to talk about British watchmaker George Daniels, one of the greatest watchmakers of all time. I honestly can't believe so many reviewers just skip over this part. When George Daniels began building watches, he decided to include elements of the best watchmakers of all time. Thomas Mudge, John Arnold, Thomas Earnshaw, no relation to the modern Thomas Earnshaw London watches who use the name, and of course, Abraham Louis Breguet, considered by many to be the greatest watchmaker ever, whose timepieces were worn by the most important statesmen and diplomats, including both Napoleon and the man who defeated him, the Duke of Wellington. So why am I talking about George Daniels and what's his connection to the Omega Seamaster? In his first watches, Daniels used traditional escapements, but became determined to create a more mechanically efficient watch. After years of development, Daniels took his invention to Switzerland and met with several manufacturers who dismissed it as too thick to be used in wristwatches. Daniels had used it in pocket watches. Not one to be defeated, he made changes, created a movement just 2 millimeters thick and took it back to Switzerland and kept nagging them until eventually one company, Omega, agreed to try it. Daniels later said that working with Omega's watchmakers on the development was a truly satisfying experience, adding that it was thrilling to see his aspirations fulfilled so perfectly, including the movement's remarkable performance, long service length, and minimal wear. In 1999, Omega released the Omega DeVie Co-Axial Escapement Limited Edition, the first watch to have it. And now, the coaxial escapement is on the Seamaster 300 and other Omega watches. The Seamaster 300 is, as the dial says, a master chronometer. That means it's undergone a series of rigorous tests and passed, including being subjected to a 15,000 Gauss magnetic field, 300-meter depth test, shock testing, accuracy position testing, hot and cold temperature variation tests, and accuracy with low and full winding. As an owner, you can log into the Omega website using your owner's card and see what tests your exact watch underwent and exactly how it performed in each one. My watch, tested over 4 days while being subjected to the various hardships, came away with an average daily precision of 0.4 seconds per day. Wow. So, great looks, great features, great history, and phenomenal accuracy notwithstanding, why did I choose this watch over the better-known Rolex Submariner? Well, you could argue that the value for the price of the Omega is better, and it certainly is, but that wasn't really the reason. So what are the reasons? Some people who buy a Submariner love the history of the watch and appreciate its craftsmanship, and I appreciate and respect those people. However, far too many people buy the Submariner as a snob status item and conversation piece, many of whom don't even know how to wind it. And as my ultra-wealthy ex-girlfriend once said, anyone who buys a Rolex to impress someone isn't very impressive. Wearing a Submariner can certainly invite an uncomfortable amount of both adoration and animosity, not to mention an increased likelihood of being mugged. In short, as beautiful and historical as the Submariner is, it comes with baggage. The Omega Seamaster 300 isn't as aesthetically pleasing as the Submariner, in my opinion, but the design also isn't as commonplace. The Seamaster is a luxury watch model that, although unique and elegant and superbly made, most people won't recognize. If you want everyone to notice the brand of luxury watch you're wearing, this isn't the watch for you. If you want the primary enjoyment to be for yourself, with a movement designed by one of the greatest watchmakers of all time, this is your watch. Well, that's my review of the Omega Seamaster 300. I hope you enjoyed it. There are many more videos to come, so hit the subscribe button, and I will see you in the next video.